Okay, I think we are being live streamed, and just as an extra backup, I'm going to record this as well. Might as well. Just make sure that we don't miss anything. Good morning, everyone. I am Kellyanne Parker, one of the co-hosts of Out Loud Podcast, here with my other co-host, Doug. You want to?
How you doing? I'm Douglas Calla.
Great. We're really excited to have you. We're hosted, thankfully, by Red or Green Books, and that's READ or Green Books. And we're very grateful to have you here today. We're going to be talking about activism, past and present. We're going to talk about how art plays into it. We have two amazing guest hosts that are joining us here today. And I just wanted to share a little bit about who they are. So first up, we have Jeffrey Bryant, which you can't say the name Jeffrey Bryant without looking at this amazing book, The Catacombs of Vanished Lovers. I am on my second reading of it, and there's a good reason. It's literally one of my favorite books. Jeffrey is a pushcart nominated queer poet. His work has appeared in numerous publications, including the LA Times, LA Weekly, Synchronicity Magazine, Quill and Echo, and Tension Literary, as well as the anthologies Coiled Serpent, Altadena Library Review, Shadowplay Literary Journal, and Sparring with Beatnik Ghosts. His debut collection, The Catacombs of Vanished Lovers, is now out from Cherryhead Press. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure to be here with
Oh, thank
you.
And then our other guest host is my own partner, Eileen Samowitz. And Eileen is a fine art photographer who focuses on unseen and altered realities, including infrared, long exposure, macro, and black and white photography. Eileen began their photographic journey shooting landscapes and doing black and white processing in the 80s, taking a composition class in Art Wolf's living room in 1985. Eileen is a scientist, musician, as well as an artist. They blend all these aspects of their life with their photography, and as a geophysicist, geologist, their love of waves of all sorts includes seismic sound, light, and ocean. And I am, oh, and I began as a lesbian, gay, queer in 1973. That was the year that they came out at SUNY at Stony Brook. They were a founding member of the Women's Resource Center, the Gay Community Center, and a Gay Crisis Line. And in Seattle, they worked at the Gay Crisis Center and was the founder of the Seattle Women in Black, which is a Jewish pro-Palestinian group, which is pretty cool, organizer for the first Lesbian National Conference, a member of Groundswell, and a founding member of the Klesbians, which is a klezmer band. So welcome, Eileen.
Nice to be here. Looking forward to talking with everybody.
Very cool.
And
So,
then there's Lily on my lap.
oh, Lily. Hi, Lily. Lily, we don't, Lily's questioning. We don't know what gender identity or sexual orientation Lily has. So, but that's okay. Lily's in LA. Doug, you want to share? Doug had pulled up some really important pieces of history, and we'll share some of them before we open it up to our two guests, just to kind of give some context. And now, for some of us, it's very familiar. For some of our listeners, it may not be. To give some context of what we've been working on, what we're still working on.
All right, here it goes. So basically, the overview is the gay civil rights movement is a social, political, and legal struggle to gain equal rights, protections, and acceptance for people who identify as LGBTQ. It emerged in the 20th century alongside broader civil rights movements. There's a couple of things, couple of notable timelines. In pre-World War II, same-sex relationships were widely criminalized and stigmatized. Small underground networks of gay men and lesbians existed, but open activism was really rare. However, in the 50s and 60s, that's when it really kind of, that's when activism kind of really kind of I guess gained more momentum. And then with in the late 60s, around the time of Stonewall, the Stonewall riots in New York City, sparked by a police raid on the Stonewall Inn, which was a gay bar, ignited a more, I guess, according to what I wrote here, like a more militant type of activism. And then throughout the 60s and 70s, there were pride marches that began in 1970 that commemorated Stonewall and evolved into today's worldwide pride celebrations. And we track a little bit into the 80s. Activism, activists fought for the repeal of sodomy laws and anti-discrimination. And then we get to the AIDS crisis, which began in the 80s through the 90s, which really galvanized activism, and groups like ACT UP demanded government action and healthcare access. And then we really get to closer to today, I guess starting in like the 2000s, where there was a shift. There was a bit of a dramatic shift toward acquiring marriage equality, adoption rights, and ending the very controversial don't ask, don't tell in the military. And recent milestones in the last 10 years, 2015, under Obama, Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage nationwide in Obergefell versus Hodges. And basically, there's a broader impact that seeks legal equality under the auspices of marriage, employment, and healthcare, but also really works towards acceptance and visibility that does challenge stereotypes and ongoing discrimination. It also intersects with struggles for racial justice, women's rights, and broader human rights. So there you go.
Thank you so much, Doug. That helps give us context of what's happened, right, since the 50s and what we've done and where we've come. I want to open it up to our guests right now to tell us a little bit about yourselves, about your art, about how queerness plays in impacts your art. So Jeffrey, why don't you start out by sharing with us?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me this morning. It's really a big pleasure. It's interesting that you started off with a little overview about rights, because it brought to mind a paper I did when I was in graduate school that was essentially explored the jurisprudence jurisprudential history, there we go, I knew that would get that out, of the various cases that had, now this was about 15 years ago that I wrote this, but it was the various cases that were eventually going to lead to the Obergefell decision. And so I sort of, had a little history in studying that too. My poli-sci was my major in college and in graduate school. So how that led to poetry, who knows? All roads lead to poetry, I guess. I have been writing. I initially went to New York, I think in 1980 or so. And I went to high school on a scholarship to the American Musical and Dramatic Academy, which I was going to. I envisioned myself becoming, I guess, some new musical stage star or something. Diversions kind of took place, but New York was kind of a formative year. And in fact, Kellyanne, as you can probably see in some of the poems, there is reference to sort of that period. And I came back and with a partner was involved in a band. I was a co-founder of an arts collective called Damaged Californians, not our name. Somebody else gave us that name. And it was a video and art collective. And did a lot of performance and musical creative things for a while. Then I went back to school. Got my BA and my MA. I've worked in the media for about 25 years on the business end. And all throughout that time, I've been writing in various ways. Poetry kind of was there, a lot in my 20s. I took a workshop with Austin Strauss, who was the partner of Wanda Coleman. And so I got to meet Wanda and a few people who were involved in the famous Beyond Baroque Wednesday night poetry group way back then, like John Doe and Exene, who I didn't actually meet in that group, but I mean they were part of this sort of revival that was going on in the 80s. And it just kind of faded out a little bit. I got published once, that's the LA Weekly. And then I thought, okay, well, I've got that $25 check, I've arrived. So years later, though, I just started writing again and eventually honing my craft a bit. And then in the last couple of years, kind of coterminous with a diagnosis of stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, um, for which I am on treatment, and I am doing very well and holding stable. And it was kind of a little fire starter there for a lot of the writing that I was doing. And I became involved with online groups like Cobalt Poets, Collapse, Saturday Night Special, and just sort of exponentially getting to know different people like you and others, and just building and building and getting published more and more. And then I met Natasha in 2023, I think almost 2 years ago, at one of Holly Hardy's workshops, a 30 poems, 30-day workshop. Actually met several people who are very good friends now. And Natasha and I kind of took a liking to each other's contributions during that workshop. And so you sort of discovered, the voice that I had. And then a little over a year later, came to me and said, do you want to do a collection? And, I was sort of like, oh, I haven't even thought about a chapbook. So she sort of, lit the flame, and I got busy and we got busy and working with her. And her project, it was really easy to believe in, because she was very excited to start her own press, but more importantly, to start a press that sought out young queer emerging voices, poets, and to get them in print. Now, of course, I'm not the young part in that equation, but emerging does fit. And so she liked the work that I had produced up to that point. So we got busy on Catacombs and came out with it in July. And I'm, helping her, get the next couple of books out. And I'll refrain from mentioning the poets at the moment because I know we've got a couple of them lined up. I'm not sure who's going to come out in what order, but at any rate, she's amazing. As you well know, I mean, put it this way, her legend speaks for itself up there in the Bay Area, and she, was really instrumental in helping bring this whole project about, and I couldn't be more thrilled. And getting a chance to, among many other things, meet you in Berkeley, which was really wonderful and exciting. I think that's my life story so far, sort of, kind of. But
That's wonderful. And I love Natasha. Natasha is the publisher and editor for
yes.
Cherry Pie Press, which is a queer press, and their debut collection is your debut collection. So that's
Hmm.
pretty exciting. I literally have all but one of Natasha's books, and I don't have the Veronica Lake one yet, but I'm getting that. And her Aileen Wuornos book was unbelievably amazing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think it
I
was
completely concur
incredible.
with you. That's the one that just said, I can't believe this person. I mean, she
I
was just,
know.
yes, it was a remarkable piece of work.
It was a remarkable piece of work. Well, wonderful. Welcome.
Thank
And
you.
Eileen, tell us a little bit about your art journey, your activism journey, how that plays together, or just about you. Share something with us.
Sure. So I come to my activism from innately. My maternal grandparents were in Belarus, Russia, and they were communists and they were giving out flyers and everything at a time when they were in danger from the Tsar and the pogroms that were happening. And then they came to the U.S. My mother followed in their footsteps and almost got blacklisted in the 50s for her work with the New School of Social, um, the New School in New York. And I started my actual activism at anti-war rallies in the 60s. And when I came out in 1973, it was very natural transition to get involved in the women's rights, lesbian rights, gay rights, and stuff. I started out at SUNY State University of New York at Stony Brook, and with that, I was one of the founders of the Women's Resource Center. Um, and from that Women's Resource Center, we ended up getting a lesbian collective of seven lesbians who were living together collectively, and we were the core of the founders of the women with along with men of the Gay Community Center, as well as the first gay hotline. So it was, a lot of beginnings and great things that were happening with that. And I continued my activism throughout my life. Most of the work that I have done was while I was living in Seattle. I lived there for 39 years, and I was involved in doing I was in a group called Groundswell, which was considered a radical lesbian feminist organization, and we had a lot of different projects. We worked on doing a lot of anti-racism in the lesbian community. And one of the things that I did with two other women was we founded the Seattle Women in Black demonstration, which was in front of the federal building every Friday, every once a month in solidarity with the Jewish women in Israel who were um, demonstrating for a two-state solution for the Palestinians. And this was in the 80s. So this was like, pretty early in that. And it was, a very controversial situation as well. And then probably one of the fun things where my politics definitely intersected my art was I played accordion, and I founded with a couple of other women a lesbian klezmer band in Seattle, and we were around for a while. We marched in the first lesbian march in Seattle, and we performed even on the radio and in Seattle Center as part of the Bumper Shoot festival, which is one of the biggest festivals in Seattle, and it's still going on to these years. And that was the first time I was ever on the radio, so that was very, very exciting. And as Kellyanne said, my art has been primarily music, and I talked a little bit about that in terms of the intersection with gay and Jewish activism. And I also am very interested in doing landscape photography, infrared photography. I want to show the world with a different way of seeing things, but I think it's really very important now to be able to document things that we're seeing, around the climate, around the animal species that are around, the plants and stuff like that. So that's how it's continuing in my life.
Very cool, very cool. And so, I will put the first question to you, Eileen, and that is, one of the ways that activism has changed more recently is the challenge of, what we call TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists. And that's that was a complicated thing because the early lesbian movement was a separatist movement. And so there was a lot of identity that people are still working through, is like how to be inclusive, how to be trans inclusive. So tell me about your thoughts around that.
Well, I think it's a very complex situation because I think there's a whole large piece of lesbian feminism that is still bound up in the separatism, and people have built their identity around that. And unfortunately, um, there's been a certain amount of closed-mindedness in the lesbian community around trans issues. I think that it's something that people are working on now, that there's a lot of discussion. There are a lot of groups that are very trans inclusive. Those are the groups that I only choose to belong to. And I think it is still something that is separating the community because there is a divide between people who feel that um, trans rights are not or should not be recognized in the way that I believe they should be, as well as a lot of other queer people. And there's also a movement too. Like I always thought of myself as a lesbian feminist, and now I'm moving away from my identity that way to being, just in terms of all of the different pieces of myself that I'm open to exploring in terms of being more gender queer and wanting to be in organizations where that is what's being celebrated.
Thank you for that.
I actually wanted to pose a question as well, to both of you. Would be, what do you, I mean, being that you've been activists for so long and you've seen the evolution, of it throughout the decades, what do you feel is the greatest, what do you feel is like the most effective form of activism?
Um, the I think, I mean, this might sound like a cop-out answer to a certain degree, but I think all of them. And the reason that I say that is because we have a multitude of resource platforms and opportunities to reach a whole host of people in so many different ways. It's still effective to make phone calls. When you call Congress people, it sounds like, it's kind of more passive, like just you to pick up the phone and leave a message. Well, it has an effect. It has a multiplier effect. I actually read a book about during my studies about how the congressional offices take this stuff seriously. They actually will sit there and write down, the numbers of calls you're getting, the percentages, and how much, people set certain public sentiment is swinging. And of course, there's online platforms. There's, yes, there are issues with the there are factual problems with every particular, everything. There's factual problems with the New York Times, for gosh sakes. However, marching is effective. There was like a percentage put on it by somewhere I read that it was like 3%. You get 3% of the population marching at any place in time throughout a particular paradigm that you're going through. And that's almost effective enough to really motivate change. Marching gets, it gets clips, it gets on the news, it gets circulated, it gets on your Facebook feed. And people can see, and that sort of has that psychological effect to sort of, engender a bit of resistance and anger in what people, and they see the multitude of people who are marching and what they look like, and who they are, the racial compositions, the gender compositions, anything, all the different groups. I recently marched for the first time in a pride parade in LA. And one of the beautiful things that I noticed, which is also, there's a point of contention here too, which I can mention a little bit later, was being able to look throughout the crowd as we're going down the street And of course, there's nothing but joy. There's joy, people are dancing, having a wonderful time, but all kinds of issues are being raised along that entire route. People are talking about Gaza. People are holding signs up about, abortion rights. A whole host of things. And I thought, there are people who want to be myopic about this. They want to box issues, and that's probably goes to the heart of what you were talking about with turfs. It's like, but this liberation in a broader sense is inclusive of all of the liberation struggles that we have. And so to be able to see the majority of the signs, the majority of the sentiment obviously was focused on LGBTQ issues. But there was all this sprinkling of other things in there, and it made it kind of a beautifully inclusive experience. So, I mean, like I said, my answer to that question is a bit of a cop out because I just feel like, do everything you can do, whatever you can do, and just keep and think of it as, think of it in multiplier effect.
Right.
That it eventually, if you make 5 phone calls, if I go to 2 marches, blah, blah, we all kind of in the aggregate are part of some movement towards our goals. So
Yeah. And if marching didn't work, they wouldn't try to stop it.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yes,
I think a
Right,
lot of
exactly.
times,
exactly.
whatever you see them trying to stop the most is the thing that's working the most. So,
That is, yeah, good point. Good point.
Yeah.
any thoughts, Eileen?
Yeah, one of the things that, is really different for me is that I've always lived in really big cities up until the last 5 years, and now I live in a small rural area where the big city is 10,000 people. And so, there is rallies here every single week, and I go as often as I can. There's, I'm getting more involved in like more of the mainstream political movements too, because of the coalitions that need to be built. The one thing that's always really good is that during all of the rallies I go to here, I always see pride flags. Um, and one of the things that they're, you know, that is really good is that that is you know now seen as one of the main issues that people are talking about, whether or not they're queer or not. It's gotten so much more pub publicity and mainstream acceptance, that it's just really wonderful, to really see that. If I go back 50 years, I never would have imagined, some of the things that, have happened. And it still amazes me quite a lot.
Hmm. Yeah.
Did you have another question, Doug?
I think let me see. What about let's see. Yeah, I think what I wanted to really dive into is, you both of you are both of you are practicing artists in your own disciplines. How do you feel the role of activism, or how do you feel the role of your art is integral, or how does it dovetail with your activist um leanings and efforts in your individual lives?
Um, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'll
Go ahead.
I'll start with that. So one of the things that I think is definitely there for me is that, with my art form being, primarily being photography, I'm looking at the whole world around me. And so anything that has any political, I think politics runs through everything, even if you look at the forests, there's politics involved in that. We're protecting our lands now. We've had to protect the trees, and it's an ongoing struggle. So it's, celebrating that and showing that. There's art that I've taken, and we'll show a piece of that later, where I do infrared photography, which you get to see um, the infrared spectrum, which is the spectrum that the visible eye doesn't see. And it shows, a lot more details and stuff. And like one of the things that I think is really important is documenting, the climate change and everything like that. So I have, some pieces where I have, buildings that are falling into the Columbia River. And it's beautiful in its own right, but it also documents the state of climate change. And I think that that's, an important thing to do with all of all of the landscape work that I do, all of the bird work that I do, and all of the infrared work that I do.
And Jeffrey?
Yeah, I was going to say that when you were talking, Eileen, about how it's politics sort of infuses a lot of things, and it's very all encompassing. I was just having a short flashback to when I was talking with some work colleagues about Brokeback Mountain when it came
Oh
out.
yeah. Mhm.
And
Oh yeah.
and the conversation was sort of an uncomfortable conversation among, heterosexual individuals. And so I said, well, it's a very political film. And they said, well, in what sense is it a political film? And I said, all the legal, cultural, and social norms favor everyone sitting at this table where we all talking, except, somebody like me or the people who are the men who are being depicted in Brokeback Mountain. All they have to do is kiss each other on screen, and you're already getting into that sort of mindset of where this sits in your preconceptions and your prejudices. And so, yeah, it's everywhere. And as far as what what I'm doing with my poetry, my poetry kind of blends some overt politics in with just the politics of being queer, the politics of simply expressing joy or sorrow or loss or pain of loss in within the context of queer love. And love is universal, and so it's also political. I mean, it's like right now it's super political. So, what I'm writing about in my poetry, is it doesn't, let's say, how does the administration put it? It doesn't comport, or something of that nature. It doesn't comport with the aims of the current administration, something like that. That's what they kept saying when they kept canceling NEA grants, so, from organization by organization or individual by individual. I'm like, okay, well, then we have our work cut out for us. Then we have to go out there and we have to be even more of who we are, more queer. We have to go out there and we have to publish stuff and paint and stage plays and make films and just continue to have these expressions and let these expressions be louder and stronger than the resistance that's being put up against it, because that resistance will fall eventually. So and it will fall because we'll fight it directly, and we'll also fight it by being who we are, as much as we can in public. So just any press that's LGBTQ oriented is certainly, or any press that is BIPOC oriented, or any other particular trying to elevate underserved or underheard or emerging voices, is just simply resisting. It on one particular level, it's resistance. Or what, reading a publication, whatever it is, it's always resistance. So to that extent, I hope that answered the question a little bit about how politics infuses the work, because it's kind of always there. There's activism, yes, over here too, but it's always there inside the work as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that is cool about now versus, 10, 20 years ago is that the general public is more on our side than ever.
Mhm.
So in terms of having a lot more ally support, it's bigger in numbers, the resistance is bigger in numbers. So, and for myself, I think one of the things I want to posit is like, you know, what can we do uh, as a community to be more supportive of our trans friends, and how can we be more inclusive in creating safe spaces, and how can we speak up, and I think just inviting people to the table is a big part of it. And but I think that's one of the things that, because whoever is being targeted the most is basically it's a target to all of us, but we can't stand by because it's not us. And so I guess I want to just ask our guests, what do you think? Like how can we do a better job?
Um, I think um, it's very important to meet it, I guess, just to well, you were talking earlier about pride flags at rallies. Bring pride flags, bring trans flags, follow what's going on legislatively and see what you can do to help resist it. Contribute. Contribute to Trevor Project. I actually had the opportunity to volunteer a little bit with Trevor Project. So, they've lost funding from the federal government, and they are, sadly taking more calls and texts and chats than they ever have in light of everything that's going on. So, I think the best way to look at a particular issue is to take another multi-pronged approach to it. And those of us who are very fortunate to have beautiful, wonderful trans people in our lives, ask them, check in, say, how they're doing, how things are going, what can we do? I mean, the Cherry Pie is a trans press, and I keep in touch with other trans friends to try to make sure that, say, hey, how's it going? Let's just talk about what's going on. I'm holding space. Hold space. Hold space. If they reach out to you, that's another form of activism, because you're helping build some strength that is being chipped away by forces around them. There's no magic answer, but there's just a number of things that you can sort of do, simultaneously, I think, to sort of work on all this horror that's going on that is dehumanizing our
Yeah.
family.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, on that token, I know that there is like a bit of there is a I think a mental health crisis in the LGBTQ community. And I think I brought up, or I didn't bring up the term yet, but transphobia and queer erasure, I think are pretty common these days. And there's like individual attitudes around it, and as well as like, prejudices that are more systemic, that are more discriminatory systemically, such as like certain laws or policies that like deny members, people who are transgender access to things like healthcare, bathrooms, IDs, participation in sports, and like legal protections. So I mean, it kind of runs the gamut of like it's not just about someone's individual, attitude towards someone on a surface level. It's more like it goes way deeper than that, you know?
I'll actually speak to that. I mean, for most of us, it started with our families. Like we lost people, right? Family or friends. And then your government makes laws against you, you know, and so there's something that people have been fighting about ever since they came out. And then now we have a situation where it is, uh, a movement of horrible people who are trying to erase us, erase our history, not only set laws against us, but like pull down history, strip that history, revisionist history.
Yep.
And that's dangerous, and it also is triggering for the losses that you might have had. And I wonder if our guests want to speak about anything about that.
Well, the one thing that I was going to say is that I think it's really important to be vocal in all the organizations that you belong to, because, like right now, I only choose to be involved with organizations that are inclusive. But just because they state that they're inclusive doesn't mean that everybody in the organization believes that. It's people find the best fit. So I think that it's really important to make sure that when an organization is being inclusive, that people who are coming to it feel welcomed by as many people as they can, because just by stating the inclusivity doesn't really make the organization feel that way for people. And I think that that's what is something that I look to do, is to make sure that I hold that space everywhere I go for people. And that's, whether or not it's inclusive or not, I hold the space. But I think it's also a reminder to do it in places that are saying that they're being inclusive, so that people truly feel that they're welcome there.
I was just going to add something in relation to what we've been talking about. And it was a clip that someone had sent me recently. And I don't remember the individual, but who they were is not really important. They felt it necessary to make a distinction between gay and lesbian people and queer people. And that, gay and lesbian people are searching for rights and want to fit in and want to assimilate, and queer people want to upset the apple cart. That's a really kind of a thimble kind of summary of what the gist was. And it reminded me, or it made me think of some of the people who are, let's say, log cabin Republicans, and also worse, gay men, I think mostly in the Trump administration. Actually, there are gay women in the Tammy Bruce, I think, has had some kind of role now in the Trump administration. So one thing that's really challenging, I think, is to try to you sort of have to combat this thinking. I mean, I consider myself gay and queer. I mean, there are elements that, I have an orientation and I have an identity. And so they're not really that, I don't know the extent to which they're sharply divided, but that's, if you have to put them in categories, that's it. But as far as I'm concerned, queerness is a personal manifestation of a whole host of feelings that you have. It's an umbrella term. It's now a powerful term, whereas it was a disparaging term. And that transformation has been a very positive transformation. If older, I guess sometimes it's like, those of us who, remember when calling someone a queer was terrible. And had sort of evolved through that, but they still sort of maybe there's a percentage that still sort of hold on to that. Well, we're different than these people. We're the LG is over here, and all this other stuff is over here somewhere. And I think that's damaging, and I think it needs to be addressed and resisted anytime it comes up in a conversation, because all the letters are there for a reason. All of our rights are sort of, they're hammering away at everybody, and if you're starting this process of saying, well, we're not like the others, I think we heard some of those things in the Third Reich, didn't we? I mean, there was this, like, oh, we're okay. You can hate the other people. We'll help you hate the other people. And I'm like, no, that's not where we need to be. We need to try to, work. And this is where turfs, that issue comes in. It's like, first of all, understand who trans people are, understand transgender people. And then if you have some kind of an educated comments to make about it, feel free to do so, but don't do them, from this position of ignorance. And especially when you're at that, elevated level, like that particular author whose name I will not mention.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Well,
Yeah.
it brings to mind also biphobia, right? So,
Yes.
most of my early life, I identified as bisexual, and I used to say that I'm part of the acronym, but I'm not part of the community, and I felt that way until I really engaged as a queer person and identified as queer. And that was really transformative to me because it was in the queer community that I was accepted, and where I didn't feel accepted in other places. And of course, my identity evolved as I got older. But, that is, I think, one of the things where, people that feel outside in the queer community where there really aren't any outsiders. And there's, we have it's just probably the most inclusive part of the LGBTQIA plus community.
Mhm. Yeah. I just wanted to make a mention. I remember this is quite some time ago at a pride parade, and a bisexual group was marching in the parade, and someone shouted out and said, buy now, pay later. And I thought, seriously, really, and I mean, I think that goes to the attitude of exclusion that you're talking about. It's like as if, as if a whole cohort of people are, somehow having their cake and eating it too, or whatever, and it's just, we're all fighting the same fight. I know what you're talking about. I've been in that position before emerging as a queer person and accepting my gay orientation. So bi inclusivity is deeply important, like all the other inclusivities. We have to fight against this, um, ghettoization of who we are within our alphabet.
Mhm. Well, we
Well,
have about 14
yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
Do you think everybody should jump into maybe Jeffrey could share some poems and Eileen could
Oh,
share
sure.
some
Yeah,
photography or not?
you read my mind.
Oh, let me I I grabbed another book from another fine poet, but I'm sure that you would prefer me to read mine. Um, so let's see. Where's my water? Oh, here, coffee. Okay. I'll read how many do you want me to read? Five, four, three?
I don't-
You're muted.
You're
Oh,
muted.
sorry. Let's do three.
Three. Okay,
yeah, I
great.
think three is good. Three's good.
Okay. Let me read. Um, I'll start off with this one. This is one that I opened my sets with when I was up in the Bay Area. It's not August anymore, so we can use September for this one. August Abad. I pull myself out of a hat each morning. I scribble down the passwords buried in birdsong. I chant my name in pronouns from lost tongues. I time travel to find the perfect coffee. My face is so full of headlines, there's too much clickbait in the sunrise. I just want to close my eyes again and feel the dancing apostrophes across my skin. I will find beauty unfolded on ancient maps, space cartographied by the nocturnal who move the familiar while I sleep. Pollux and Castor draw my bath, both looking simply Olympian. And I slip in, and I feel them loofah me whole. A day sits for me to move through, all funhouse mirrors and mumbled disclaimers, but I find my hat again and pull you out of it, and we breathe each other full. Let's see here. I want to read one in particular since we've been talking about activism and politics that I don't usually read. Turn it. Pardon me. Sorry. Okay, page 16. Thank you. It's called Still Here, Still Queer, Different Year. Still queer, still here, we awaken to a feeling mighty real reveille. Another day of thrusts and parries against public monsters who fly erasures, blood red flags, blinding with the whites of their lies. Unravel their ideologies, gather up fallen words to repurpose in poems, fill poem grenades and lob them into orgies of power. We find our lips through dirt on our faces, and we fit masks on each other against poison disappearing us. Spent, we go to bed in our solace foxhole, lowering our guard in the dark embrace. There's politics inside every orgasm. Sucking you is forbidden speech. We didn't sign up for war. We were drafted by our body's desires. We spent all night in each other's arms, keeping our tongues safe from harm during nightmares, insomnia, before the morning alarm, and the reveille of feeling real. Thank you. I'm going to read one more here. This is called Packing, Unpacking. Mother packed clothes for summer family trips, laying out the gendered for me so tenderly. I was all faceless, trapped within lines, costumed in this boyhood. I met myself in mirrors, in lipstick confessions, draped in her silks, doors locked, listening for footsteps, seeing myself in this silence and my need that she never know the barcode of my sexuality, its straight lines always deceiving me. As a teenager, I wrapped her bloodied winter breast, disease devoured, screaming for escape. I sought solace on another boy's tongue, quietly, after school, in my room, next to her room, trying to be what she needed, listening to her in days, trying to get what I needed at the headwater of a river gender fluid. I unpacked her death, cupping handfuls of weeping light deep in the crevasse of my grief, grieving myself to sleep, waiting for any dream where I finally get to tell her who I am. Thank you.
Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
Eileen, did you want me to share your site?
No, why don't you let me
All right.
do the share?
I am going to make you. Oh, I can't make you a co-host. All right. I will. I'll do it.
Okay.
Here we go. Did you want to say anything about it as I'm pulling it up?
No, I want you to pull it up.
All right. All right. I
Oh, am I sharing?
no. Uh I'm having trouble pulling up your website. Oh, here, it's up. Great. It looks great.
Is that you or is that me?
That's you.
Okay. So, so this is my overall website. I have a combination of things that I've been showing in galleries a lot, and then I have a special um, area that I am showing all of my infrared scapes together, and that's a word that's been adopted from instead of just landscapes, but since they're all infrared, and this is the one I was talking about before. This is a photo of sinking into the Columbia, and you can see this house is in the middle of a stormy feeling, and you can see that it's actually sitting in the water in the background, and you could see that there's a railroad and just all of the stuff that is happening due to the climate change and how things are changing. And I think the infrared in this really adds to the feeling that I'm trying to express. This is the next one I want to show, and this is one that I took up in the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, and these are mammatus clouds, and these are four warnings of very violent storms and weather. And one of the things that I think is really appealing about that is just showing like the strength and the overall power that these clouds really have and how much they um just show the power of the weather. Similarly, this is on Lake Superior, and this is a lighthouse there, and you can see the storminess of the clouds as well as the violent waves that are coming across on this lake. And the wind was so stiff, and you would have a hard time believing it was a lake rather than a more larger body of water, more like a sound or um, even ocean. And this one is the last one I'm going to show, and this just really shows the tranquility of something as simple as a tree along a marshy area. This was in a national wildlife refuge where I was looking to do some bird photography, and I was just drawn by this overall landscape. And you can see also how much power the clouds have in this form. Do I have time for another one, or should I end? Looks like we're
Yeah, go ahead and do one more.
okay. And this is the bridge in the town in the next town that I live in, and this was at like twilight time, and I was able to use the infrared to really show the lines and the power of the construction as well as adding some interest in terms of the actual color explosion of the sunset.
Very cool.
Yeah, really awesome.
These are
Really,
gorgeous.
really foreboding, kind of foreboding, actually.
Yes. These
They have,
give rise to the possibility of some interesting ekphrastic poems,
I was thinking,
especially the
for
two
sure.
houses. I mean, there's so much rich material there to or visually to work with. That's beautiful shots, beautiful work,
Yeah,
Eileen.
just
Thank
the
you.
texture alone, the textures and composition are just really
Yeah,
immaculate. So, well,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Jeffrey, you want to drop your link to your book in the chat?
Let me drop a couple things in the chat.
Okay, and we'll drop it on our Facebook page as well.
Okay.
Uh, this has been a really wonderful talk. Thank you so much for sharing the morning with us, and thank you for dealing with my stuffy nose cold. Uh, but it's really been a pleasure, and
yeah.
you're two obviously favorite people of mine. We all know that Eileen is my favorite person. Uh, and but it was really wonderful. Jeffrey, your book is just stunning. It's just absolutely stunning. Love and heartbreak and loss and hope. There's just so much beauty and throughout all the pages. And I
Thank
just thank you.
Thank you so much, Kellyanne. It's really an honor to hear that from you. Thank you. I just wanted to explain that if you want to order a copy of the book, you can email to the email address. Wait a minute. You know what? Hold on. Hold on. I screwed that up. Let me do this again. The cherry pie. Yes.
So the
At the
cherry
cherry pie
pie
press
press.
at Gmail.
Oh, at gmail.com.
Yeah, I'm not let me there we go. The Cherry Pie Press at gmail.com. Natasha, our beloved editor and publisher, will get in touch with you and see that connect you so that you can get a copy of the book. And you can also follow us on Instagram at the Cherry Pie Press.
Oh, wonderful. Great. And Eileen, also your website, eileensamowitz.com. And are
And
there
and
socials?
and you can order prints directly from the website if you're interested. If there's also ways to get in contact with me if you want to do something a little bit different than what's available on the website.
Great. Nice.
Great. Thank you so much. And we want to
Thanks,
thank
guys.
Marissa and Red or Green Books, my co-host and our guest host today, Eileen Samowitz and Jeffrey Bryant. It was wonderful spending the morning having coffee with you and learning about the wonderful work that you're doing.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I had such a wonderful time.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks so
It's
you.
much.
been wonderful to meet all of you.
Yeah.
Enjoy your day. And we'll
All
All right.
post your links on the Facebook page.
Thank
Have a good
you.
day. Enjoy,
Bye.
everybody.
All right. Take care. All right. Bye.
Okay.